So first of all, why a talk around supply chain management or integrated PV value chain management as part of the production forum? And hopefully I will be able to explain that to you during my session. And the second question is probably, what the heck is IBM doing? So the second question, let me answer directly to you. So within IBM, we are putting a very heavy focus on what we call our smarter planning strategy. And within that strategy, it's a core element that we want to be more efficient with the planet's resources that we have available. And so we also, as you probably know, have a quite strong background in semiconductor industry. Silicon is certainly not a strange word for us. We've been dealing with it for quite a long time. And we've also been doing quite some heavy research, actually specifically dedicated to photovoltaics. And we have a team of researchers in our research centers, for example, in upstate New York, Yorktown Heights, and where we are having collaborations with companies within the solar industry, to further advance the technologies. So while I'm not here today personally to talk about selective emitter or front surface velocity and good things like that, I would like to shed some light, since certainly production is part of the entire value chain. What we think from our perspective, from our own IBM experience, but also from experience when we're working with our clients, whether in the PV industry or in the high-tech industry, what we see really as some additional opportunities besides all the technological activities that are going on in the industry to do some more research, just like we heard from the gentlemen from the equipment makers that are very heavily focused on driving cost per watt peak and the efficiencies up for the cells and for the modules in total. So the last point I want to highlight why IBM is here. We have some industry solutions, not only for PV industry, but also for many industries that we operate in, which we believe enable the industry. So we see ourselves as a partner. So I'm not here to make the bold announcement, IBM is going to enter as a new manufacturer in the marketplace. Forget that, we are not doing that. So we are only basically a partner for the industry, to help companies to further advance, within their business operations, but also on the technological side. So let me start with a little cartoon here I've collected. And I think it's very self-explanatory. So probably many of you have been in such a situation when you manage a complex ecosystem that we have within the photovoltaic industry. So I think it's not a matter that we are lacking data. I think we all have too much information available. But I think it's a matter of how efficiently, how effectively we're using this available data to make the best out of the business and make the best out of the entire value chain. So, and how effectively you are using data, basically, we can categorize into 5 different levels, whereas the first 2 levels are really basic and build up, where you are using rudimentary reports to manage your production, to manage your procurement, to manage the entire supply chain, or to manage your sales department. So very rudimentary reports with basically data in silos hidden. So I just, this week, yesterday, I had an interesting discussion with one of the top 10 PV makers, and they are struggling with the problem with distributed manufacturing sites. And guess what? On the different sites, they have really different part numbers for actually the same item. So they have to scrap stock. And all at the end of the day, if you look at total cost of ownership for the industry, it's not only what you do with the atom to squeeze it from left or right to drive up the efficiencies, but it's also the cost of the operations that goes into the entire TCO scenario. And so that's really what also you have to consider. Lower the inventories, lower the scrap of the materials. For example, here with the example of those duplicate items with different part numbers. And then, what we consider then to be up there from the levels 3 to 5 is really, differentiation. That's really when you start using the data for production or for the supply chain in a more efficient way. So it gives you a competitive edge. And at the end of the day, it's very clear from our own IBM experience that it's not only one company. So if you're a cell maker or module maker, maybe you're fully integrated and only sell to a wholesale structure. But if you collaborate with different partners in your entire value chain, it's not only one company, your company, that is going to win the battle. It's the entire supply chain. It's your entire supply chain that's going to win the battle. And so you need to make sure that your entire supply chain works as efficiently as possible. So if we take a quick look, and I took the example here of the crystalline silicon value chain, basically going to the residential market here, but you can also put up, the other value chain structure. We are seeing in other industries, if we look at the demand changes, and the demand changes that we are seeing in the PV industry today, it was a core part of the discussion we just heard in the podium session. Typically, it starts very small on the end user side, and then the bullwhip effect goes through the entire value chain, and then the guy at the very beginning of the value chain has the main problem, because he has the highest uncertainty what is really going on in terms of demand for the end user. So what happens? The uncertainty that everybody has drives up the inventories in the different stages of the value chain. But what we are seeing in the PV industry, I think it's a bit different. That's why I think it really calls for more integration of the entire photovoltaics value chain. Even the peaks at the end user are actually already quite high. Think back when Germany in 1 year already almost had 50% of the global market, and the next year it was coming down. And if new markets are popping up, maybe depending on feed-in tariffs, etc. But the peaks already on the end user side are very heavy for the photovoltaic industry. So, due to the reasons that we all know so well. So what can you do? If the end user is causing those problems because they don't know what to purchase, let's get him out. Let's get him out of the value chain. We don't need an end user. No, probably not such a good idea. So, but seriously spoken, we see some opportunities which I would like to highlight now in the rest of my presentation for further improvement, across the entire PV value chain, ultimately also drive down the cost. So first of all starts at the sales side. So production-oriented people may say, yeah, maybe not so interested in that, but at the end of the day, that's really what determines your entire operations. So we see a very low use of electronic commerce within the photovoltaic industry. Secondly, we also see a lack of value chain visibility. Do you really know, and I can give you some examples later on, what the guy next to you in the value chain can deliver tomorrow? Sometimes that's highly unknown, interestingly. And then the third point, it's around the limited integration still that we're seeing of manufacturing equipment data, across the value chain. Of course, there are always good examples in the industry, and there are examples in the industry that have some room for improvement. So if we then look at what that really means is, on the right side, for the low use of electronic commerce, it's basically this exchange of electronic data. Value chain visibility talks about forecasting, analytics, and then manufacturing equipment data integration. That's also a question of advanced analytics. So how do we make the best use of the data that you have available within your production lines? So let's take a first look at the low use of electronic commerce. So what we are seeing, and also example from one of the leading PV makers, is that between the PV manufacturer and the wholesale channel, typically it's a very manual commerce. So manual purchase order, paper-based purchase order, we are seeing paper-based order confirmations, invoices, etc. And companies are actually investing quite a lot of resources to convert all this paper-based data into electronic form, and then just to print it out, put it onto the fax machine and send it off as a purchase order. That's ridiculous. So we're seeing, and again, that's bell curve distribution within the industry, good examples and bad examples. That applies to everything I'm talking about today. And then what we are seeing in parallel to this occurring is the opening up of additional sales channels. So today, and this example talks about the wholesale structure, but of course the EPCs also play an important element in the buying market for the PV makers. But I dare to say in the future, this is not casted in stone. So I believe there will be more sales going through retail. And I think also that there will be more sales going directly to consumers. Think about the example, Dell, many years back when they introduced their online platform where you can order your PC, and actually the PC is quite a complex thing to configure as well. So because sometimes the arguments that we get back is, can you really as an end user configure a photovoltaic system? I would say yes. If you are, supporting it through intelligent algorithms, through intelligent tools that are running in the background, absolutely. I think it's not as complicated as configuring a Dell laptop, for example. So, and what this means is also that the PV manufacturers need to extend their existing sales channels. They need to already think ahead, how to capture those rising markets. We have also heard the examples, about building integrated photovoltaics, that this is coming up. So, as well as the sales channels, and then what you have to put on top of that, of course, if you want to manage multiple sales channels, is electronic commerce. Otherwise, you're dead. You cannot handle all the volumes. If we all believe in the continuous growth of the industry, then this will be the only way how companies can really manage the growth through electronic commerce on the sales side. Let me go to the next point I made up, which is around the lack of value chain visibility, which drives uncertainty in the value chain and drives inventories. So, and what we are doing here is to show three major elements how you manage typically your entire value chain. Of course, it all should start with the thing in the middle around the demand, where you can connect to your customers, exchange forecasts with the big guys, sales orders coming in electronically, and then you do your sales operations planning and put it through your supply planning, where you also should be automatically connected with your supplier so that you really know what is going on. So I think the overall message here is really that the connections between the parties in the value chain, they need to be more elastic than they are today. Today they're probably a little bit rigid and a little bit clumsy. I think in the future, if you want to cope with those demand peaks, you need to get more elastic relations between the parties in the value chain. And of course here then on the right hand side, what is going on in terms of logistics. There were those examples, with the big ships waiting at the port of Spain, with I don't know what value of modules, and so you want to better know what the status is in terms of your logistics, where your items are, etc. And the message, of course, also should not be do the entire thing at once. So don't get us wrong. But the message is really what are the most important elements from this scenario here that bring the most value to you as a company. So you don't do everything, be very selective in what really adds some value. Next item I quickly want to touch upon is regarding what we also learned in the podium session, and I'm glad that this was confirmed by the professionals from the equipment side, the trend towards larger and more integrated fabs. It's just for example here, I broke it out into the wafer and into the cell step, and also within each step, of course, you have the different production steps, production tools that would fulfill the entire value chain step. So, but what we are seeing is, first of all, even, that's my experience, within one company that even is fully integrated in terms of their capabilities, so that that they would be doing from silicon to the ingots, to the wafers, to the cells, and to the modules. Now, even within one enterprise, I've seen examples where they are very badly connected in terms of production between the wafer and the cell step. So do you really utilize data that you get from your manufacturing execution system, which is managing your wafer step? And are you providing this data into the cell production line so that you can handle the materials better? Of course, you are very quickly going into the discussion, never change a running system, and APC is not a big topic yet, as far as our experience goes. But I believe in the future, you will also have to take this information, and then again, it's a question of data. Take this data which is available, even if it's an external supplier, even if it's not within your own company, and utilize that in the subsequent production step in the best way, and build your analytics around it. And of course, the same example we are seeing within the individual production steps, even between the different tools that data is not fully integrated. So in the beginning of the photovoltaic industry, questions were often raised. Do I really need a manufacturing execution system? So that was the first iteration here. And now I think we're almost at the position where we can say it's more or less the status quo, that this is a given, and people are using a wafer MES, or that they are using a cell MES, etc. For the module, it may be not so important at the moment. So, but actually what I personally believe is, if you want to manage the entire value chain in its best way, that you need an overriding MES system. So where you really utilize the data from the subsequent production steps, and use all the topics that are listed below here. SPC, APC, or fault detection and classification, or engineering data analysis. Those are topics. Some companies are using it already. In the high-tech semiconductor industry, of course, it's a given, and of course, it's a fair question to raise the question for the business case, but we have experience in demonstrating that there is a positive business case behind such investments, and how to utilize then this information through advanced analytics, really building correlations to what has been going on in the wafer step and adjusting the cell production line accordingly. Okay, so you may say, is this a new story? Maybe you can say no, but I seriously believe it's still true, and there's definitely room for improvement on top of the technological things that we have just heard about, and which will also be talked about during the afternoon sessions. So, and where are exactly those improvement opportunities that we are seeing? So first of all, and let me also be upfront here, the PV equipment interface standard, I think the degree of adoption can certainly grow. So this is certainly an inhibitor to the success of how you can utilize the data across your entire supply chain and make the best out of it for your production. So there's room for improvement. And also my experience, even within one company that, like I said, has all value chain steps integrated, I think still the value chain steps are very often considered independently. It's just a mindset how you approach the entire subject. So I think this also needs to be considered when looking for improvement opportunities. And of course, the best practice analytics are not fully exploited yet. In many cases, I've seen that the data available in production facilities are not utilized as they should be. Okay, so quickly to summarize here, for the benefits, of course, at the end of the day, it's really the business case that drives the entire thing here. For the low use of the electronic commerce, we're seeing a reduction in the manual effort, we're seeing improvement in data quality, and we are also seeing the opening up of new sales channels. So if you're like Dell, many years back, the first mover to do it in such a way. This may be an additional opportunity for companies in that space. Right now it may sound a little bit fancy, but I think if you seriously look or jump 3 to 5 years ahead and then look back in time to this year, you may say probably it's a valid hypothesis. And also, what we are seeing here, if you're reducing the manual efforts, it's clear that you can take those resources that you're freeing up, that are typing all those little fancy little purchase orders into the system. You can do much higher value-added stuff, through such resources. Take better care about the procurement, about the sourcing activities, and so on and so forth. So value chain visibility, clearly the highest value here is in the reduction of the demand fluctuations. It's a highly briefing system, just like we learned, and you can only brief with the entire system if you're not in 100% push mode. So production runs 100% through and you're pushing the products out into the market, but really listening to the demand side and adjusting your capacities and your production lines accordingly, which may also be, as of today, not the state of the art, but in a briefing system, that's what many other industries have demonstrated over time. I'm pretty sure in the future it will have to be the standard if you want to be successful. And of course, the main value here is in the reduction of the inventory spread across your entire value chain, spread of inventories and so on and so forth. And then the integration of the equipment data is clearly faster ramp-up of production lines and improved efficiencies and yields. So if you can really learn, how thick your silver paste was in this production step, what can you do with such finding later on in the production line? Okay, so to summarize here, apply advanced analytics is clearly a key term. Make more use out of the data which is available. Collaborate within and across the industry. And when I say collaborate, I'm not saying the industry is not collaborating, not at all, so this would be a wrong statement, but improve the collaboration through electronic means, basically. And also best practices from the high-tech industry. We have seen highly successful adoption. We are also working with customers in this segment which are using similar mechanisms like we have been using in the semiconductor industry. And this is probably the most important element of it all. Identify the biggest pain point and develop your roadmap. So we are not saying, again, do everything at once, but be very selective in what you do. There's opportunity besides the technological improvements. There's a lot of opportunity in the entire value chain management. And then be ruthless in the implementation of the items that you have selected as part of your roadmap. And this is really where the business value really comes to life. So with that, I'm hopeful that was a little bit insightful and interesting for you. I know that I was the roadblock for you getting to lunch. So hopefully it was insightful. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you very much.